Looking for weeknight meals that will wow? Look no further than these 3 recipes which feature organic proteins and lots of fresh produce. Few things are trendier right now and more nostalgic than a bowl of ramen, and it is so easy to make it look like you got it from a ramen noodle store. So we are going to make a chili crisp egg ramen. I have my water boiling here, and you are gonna be shocked at how quickly this comes together, but I am telling you, it tastes like something that you could get at a restaurant. So in the boiling water, I am putting my noodles, and I have separated the seasoning out. And one of the things I like about this recipe is that you don't need to use all of the seasoning packet, which is generally what gives ramen its bad rep for being too salty. So you don't need much of this, especially because we're gonna add so many other flavors. So we are going to actually start with cracking an egg into our bowl. And you're probably thinking, but what about the fried egg on top? You can absolutely do it that way, but stay with me here because doing it this way, we're gonna get a really nice creamy broth. So I'm only gonna put about 1/4 of a teaspoon in. You can always add more, you can always add less. And then I'm gonna take some garlic, and I'm gonna take a little bit of the chili oil. We will come back to this. Just gonna do, I like it spicy, so I usually put a lot of chili flake in it. And then we're gonna use some Kewpie mayo, which in addition to the egg, the Kewpie mayo is a little bit more of a unctuous mayonnaise because it uses a bigger ratio of egg yolk than regular mayonnaise. All right, and put about a 1/2 teaspoon of that. And then we are just gonna whisk all of this together. And that is going to create this super flavorful egg yolk that we are gonna cook when we pour the noodles right in. All right, I'm just gonna check on the ramen, probably almost done. Yes, okay. So in the 2 minutes since I put that ramen in there, really all you're doing with this is boiling that water. And we're just gonna take it off, and very slowly, we're just gonna add the egg in. Now, depending on how much flavor you want, I recommend that's how much liquid you add. So you can see we have this beautiful, beautiful egg yolk liquid that's super flavorful. And now I'm just gonna push our noodles in there, and it's okay if we get some more of that, water in. All right, noodles in. Gonna shut the stove off. All right, and let's finish this off. So I said we were gonna come back to that chili crisp. We wanna dig in there and get some nice amount of that crisp chili because you've got the separation of the oil and then the actual chili crisp. And we want a nice bit of that chili crisp. We're just gonna dot it around. Okay, then we're gonna take some sesame seeds, sprinkle those on top. Beautiful. And then lastly, we're just gonna chop up some of the scallions. I like to make sure that I get both the light green and the green parts. I think scallions add so much flavor. Such an underrated onion vegetable in my opinion, and a little, goes such a long way. The nice thing about this too is it's really easy to adapt and have different ingredients. When I do a ramen night at home, I'll have some pickled red onions, I'll have some edamame, I might have some protein, like some shrimp and some shredded carrots. So there's a lot of different things that you can put out that aren't too labor intensive to make. And then you can mix and match when it comes to your toppings, which makes it for something really fun and a little bit different than maybe a make your own pizza night. You're kind of giving your kids something new. And like I said, that broth is so creamy dreamy from that Kewpie mayo and from the egg yolk. Plus you're getting that organic egg protein in there. So even if you don't want to make a separate protein, the organic eggs have you covered. And look at that. I am telling you, restaurant quality and so flavorful and done in just a couple of minutes. Such a fun way to make a nostalgic food item come to new life. I love when a product that is easy to prepare, like a microwavable rice, can inspire a really interesting dinner that is very quick to prepare. And that is exactly what these Caribbean beef and rice lettuce wraps are. So in this pan, I have just ground up some organic ground beef along with some jerk marinade seasoning. And you can use whatever seasoning you want. If jerk's a little too spicy, they do make mild ones. You can also do maybe a Korean barbecue sauce if you're looking for something that is a little bit more on the mild side. But I just brown that up, and that is our protein element right there. And then I have this Caribbean style rice and bean blend. That is gonna be our starch that I have microwaved here. And so our starch and our protein are ready in about 10 minutes or less. This is ready in about 90 seconds. Now the fun part, the toppings. What I love about this recipe is we get to use a couple of ingredients that maybe you don't use all the time. The biggest one for me being papaya. Such a delicious fruit, and it is something that is not that difficult to prepare. I feel like it can look a little intimidating when you see it in your produce section, but you can get it in some ShopRites where they've already helped you out. This one is halfway done. And all you have to do is scoop out those seeds, similar to how you would do a honeydew or a cantaloupe, and then you're just going to cut it into cubes. And the way we cut anything into cubes is we start with our sticks. And you do want to get a fine dice on this because this is almost going to act as like a tropical salsa, if you will, to go on top of our lettuce wrap. So we just stack everything together after we have our sticks, and you just want to go really, really small. And then what I always do after I get that dice on a item, sometimes I'll run my knife through it and just do a rough chop if I'm really looking to make it smaller. Okie dokie. Great. And then I have some orange. I wanted to stick with the orange color, but you can use a red bell pepper, you can use yellow, doesn't matter. I just really wanted to go orange. And we are just going to chop some of that. Okie dokie. And then lastly, we have some cilantro, which I know is a controversial flavor, but in this dish, I think you really do need it. So it might be a really great opportunity to let your family try it in something else. You can always use parsley. It's not gonna be the same flavor, but it is doable. All right, and then I also have some green onion here, as well as some Wholesome Pantry banana chips. So now's the fun part. Now we're gonna assemble. So I have our lettuce wraps here, and it's a great way to get another vegetable in, especially because your starch is going into the lettuce wrap. So we've got a little bonus veggie, and obviously all of the elements you see here, you could chop it up and make it into a salad. So really good for leftovers for lunch. You can also make this vegetarian by using black beans only, instead of doing the jerk seasoning and the ground beef. Totally up to you. So let's take our beautiful big piece of lettuce, and we're gonna start with, I'm gonna start with the rice first. All right. And these blends are really nice because besides having a grain, they also have some beans in there, some other good for you grains. Nice blend. All right, gonna take a little bit of our jerk seasoned beef, and then I'm gonna mix this together on my cutting board and give it a nice topper. I mean, look how beautiful this is. So fresh, so simple. And then I am gonna put it down on my plate just for a second so I can open up those banana chips and crush them on. And what a fun way to add a fruit and get such a nice texture from a serving of fruit. Okay, we're just gonna crush them up. If you need to use your knife, you can. Beautiful. We've got fruits, vegetables, protein, and starches all wrapped up in a vegetable for a bonus. And there you go. Caribbean beef and rice lettuce wraps, a perfect fresh dinner ready in minutes. Chicken can sometimes seem like the boring go-to protein, but this recipe has taken the internet by storm, and this version of the recipe is one you're going to want to make over and over again. We are doing some Marry Me chicken in phyllo dough purses. Now I know that sounds fancy, but bear with me because it really couldn't be easier. So we're going to start with cubing up our chicken. So I have some Wholesome Pantry organic chicken here, and I am just going to cut it into cubes, which just helps it cook a little bit faster. And because we are putting this into the phyllo dough purses, it's going to help us to make the filling a little bit easier to divide out rather than doing it in big chicken breasts like you would if you were going to leave it and then serve it over pasta. So we are just doing that. And then what I love about this recipe is that it doesn't waste a single ingredient. So we are using the oil from the sun-dried tomatoes to both cook the chicken in, and then we're gonna use it with our phyllo dough as well. So I'm gonna just put probably a tablespoon in there. And we are gonna start cooking up that chicken. All right. Seal that. Actually, we don't wanna cross-contaminate, we'll use that. All right. So you want the pan nice and hot because you really do wanna get a good sear. So I'm just tossing it around because I want the oil to hit all sides, and then I'm gonna let it settle. And it honestly already smells so good because that oil is so fragrant. All right. Now you want to cook the chicken until it reaches an internal temperature of 165 degrees because there's really not much left to do after we do the cooking of the chicken. You're going to, for a minute, saute the basil. I don't want to put it in there while the chicken's raw, you want to let it cook. But you're going to saute the basil and then about a cup of the sun-dried tomatoes in with the chicken and a little bit of garlic. Saute that for a minute and then take it off the heat. After you take it off the heat, you're going to add 4 ounces of Neuchâtel cheese, which is a lower fat cream cheese. And because the chicken is hot, it's going to get nice and creamy. Now, if you've seen this recipe as more of a sauce, it's because they're adding usually some pasta water and more of the cream cheese. So whatever floats your boat, you can do it 2 different ways. Once you learn to make a recipe, it's always nice when you have different ways to approach it. So you can make it like a sauce, or maybe you're going to do it in the phyllo dough purses. So I do have some filling already done and cooled. That's the important thing. So this is actually a really good recipe if you want to make it the day before the filling and then cook it the next day, because that way you can have it nice and cooled, because we're going to now do our phyllo dough purses. So I have my phyllo dough over here covered in, I'm gonna move everything around because phyllo dough demands our attention. All right, you wanna keep it covered with wet paper towel. You do not wanna let the dough dry out. That's very important when you are working with it, okay. So I just rolled it out from the plastic. You can see I still have it on here because the less you have to maneuver this, the better. I'm gonna show you, it is very, very thin. Okay, I'm gonna put it like that. One sheet, you can see how thin it is. Now, the nice thing about it, especially if you're working with the purse structure like we are for this, it's okay if it rips a little bit. We're gonna be taking a couple sheets and literally just crumpling it together. That's how you make the purses. And because the phyllo dough, the texture is so thin, it's gonna work out to look like that shape. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take 1 to 2 sheets, and then I'm gonna take my oil, and I'm gonna drizzle a little bit on here. And if you have a brush, your spoon, I wouldn't use the spoon. Don't do as I say, not as I do. You wanna use your hands, because again, it's very delicate. So whether you have a brush or some dough, or some, or your fingers, you wanna use one of those. Then we take another couple of phyllo dough sheets, 1 to 2. 1 is a little too thin. And we're gonna do that again. And it's okay if it lands and it isn't perfectly on top of, and do another drizzle. All right. And then just gently cover that so it doesn't dry out. Alrighty, wash your hands. Now I'm gonna take about a 1/4 cup of filling. Put a little bit more in there. And then here's the easy part, and this is something you can definitely do with your kids. Just gonna move this over. Because all you're gonna do is you take your corners, just making sure I don't have the plastic, you're gonna pull them up together, all in a bunch, and then you're just going to take and squeeze right at the top of where that filling is. And you're left with a purse. See, super simple, and like I said, because of the nature of the phyllo dough, it just comes together. I have seen before sometimes people will put something to kind of like tie it off, but you really don't have to, and I'll show you why. Because after 10 minutes in the oven, they brown up into these beautiful purses that you can freeze, and it is something beautiful that you can eat any night of the week, and it looks like you got it from a fine dining restaurant. Delicious flavors, a super simple organic protein, a great way to satisfy your family. If you enjoyed these recipes, like and follow for more.